Hello, and welcome to Barbecue Stories channel. Thank you for stopping by. Today, I want to share a personal story, a deeply painful one about betrayal, heartbreak, and how my ex-wife cheated on me 7 times, yes, 7 times. And, to make things worse, 6 of those were with my coworkers, including my boss. You might find it hard to believe, but sometimes truth is indeed stranger and more shocking than fiction. Let me take you through the full story, starting from the very beginning. We were college sweethearts, inseparable during those years. We did everything together and even made big life decisions side by side. Our love story, like many, began with passion, shared dreams, and the belief that we were meant for each other. After finishing our studies, we tied the knot, confident we were entering a long, happy life together. Soon after, we had our first child. At that point, I truly believed that we were living in a fairy tale, or at least I wanted to believe that with all my heart. But the universe had different plans for me. My life took a drastic turn one fateful morning. I remember it vividly, even now. I had woken up early, intending to start my day quietly before the kids got up, but that morning, I saw something that would haunt me for the rest of my life. I happened to see my wife walking out of a hotel at 6 a.m., arm in arm with my former boss. She had told me she was away on a business trip, and I had stayed home with the kids, assuming everything was as it always was. What I saw shattered that assumption. But let's rewind a little. Let me tell you how we got here in the first place. Right after we graduated, my wife landed a great job at the headquarters of a large retail corporation. She was ambitious, driven, and quickly made her way up the corporate ladder. I was incredibly proud of her. Meanwhile, I took a different path. I'd always dreamed of being my own boss, and so I started my own business. Those first few years were tough, but I was hopeful that things would eventually take off. However, the economy took a nosedive, and so did my business. By the time I was 27, I realized I couldn't sustain it any longer. We were about to have our second child, and the financial pressure was mounting. So, I did what I had to do. I swallowed my pride and went back to a regular 9-to-5 job because we needed the income. The security of a steady paycheck was essential with another baby on the way. Thanks to my wife's connections, I managed to land a job at the same company she was working at, though we were in different departments. I'll be honest, at the time, she was making more money than me. She had already established herself and moved up in the ranks, while I was just starting at the bottom again. It was humbling, but I didn't mind. I was happy for her success. Then came the first sign that not everything was as it seemed. One evening, I was out drinking with a colleague after work, and he casually mentioned that he had heard rumors about my wife. He said people in her department were talking about how she was quite friendly with some of the top managers, majorly flirting, and, as he put it, getting around. I was furious. I almost got into a fight with the guy because how dare he accuse my wife of such a thing? I was 100% sure she would never cheat on me. I trusted her completely. After all, this was the woman I loved, the mother of my children. She was ambitious and driven, yes, but I thought the rumors were just that baseless office gossip fueled by envy toward her success. Little did I know how naive I was. After our second child was born, my wife went back to work from maternity leave, and I decided to leave the company and return to focusing on my business. In addition to that, I took on the role of a stay-at-home dad, which was something I actually enjoyed. I loved spending time with our kids, being there for them, and getting to witness their milestones. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but whose is? Sure, we had our ups and downs like any couple, but I never suspected she was cheating. I thought we had built something solid, a life together that would last. 7 years passed. By this time, my wife had risen through the ranks and become a director at the same company. We had 3 kids now, and while I worked from home and took care of them, I was also making enough money to contribute financially. Between the two of us, our incomes were roughly equal. I thought we were finally at a point where we could breathe easy. We traveled more, went on vacations, and enjoyed the fruits of our labor. But little did I know that while I thought we had made it, my wife had other plans. She started traveling for work more frequently, 2 days a week, every week. I found it odd, given that we didn't really need the extra income from her constant business trips. I told her several times that it would be better for her to cut down on the travel and spend more time at home with the kids. After all, they were still young, and they needed their mother around. But every time I brought it up, she would push back. She would argue that her job required it and that she had worked too hard to just give up on her career now. She promised me, year after year, that once she got her next promotion, the travel would stop. But those promotions came and went, and yet the trips continued. Eventually, she started saying things like, "The kids can call me anytime, they have their own phones." But our oldest daughter was only 8, and she didn't even have a cell phone. Those were just more excuses to avoid her responsibilities as a mother. After a while, I stopped arguing about it. I resigned myself to the fact that I was going to be the one at home, taking care of everything. I embraced being a house husband and providing for the family in the ways I could. She came home 4 days a week, showering the kids with gifts like it could somehow make up for her absence. I didn't complain much because, truth be told, I loved spending time with our kids. Picking them up from school, helping them with homework, being involved in their day-to-day lives, that was what I cherished. I just wished my wife would feel the same way. Our intimacy had dwindled over the years, but I chalked it up to the natural ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. We were making love maybe once or twice a week, and it had been that way since our first child was born. I didn't see it as a problem. We had a full, busy life, and I thought that was just part of the deal when you have a family and careers to manage. Then came the moment that changed everything. I happened to run into a former colleague of mine who still worked at the same company as my wife. We exchanged pleasantries, talked about old times, and naturally, the conversation turned to work. He mentioned how intense my wife's schedule had become, and when I brought up her frequent business trips, his reaction made me uneasy. He hesitated, then quickly tried to change the subject. It struck me as odd, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I couldn't exactly press him for more information, we weren't that close, but I made a mental note to look into it. Back at home, my suspicions started to grow. I noticed little things here and there that didn't quite add up. My wife always dressed nicely for work, but now I was paying more attention. There were no glaring signs of infidelity, nothing that would scream affair at first glance. We still had a connection, like we did in the early days of our relationship, but it was hard to ignore the fact that she was traveling more and more. And then I remembered those old rumors, the ones I had dismissed all those years ago. Something inside me snapped, and I knew I had to find out the truth. So, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I put a GPS tracker on her car without her knowing. I told myself it was just to put my mind at ease, that I was probably being paranoid. But as the days went on, I realized my worst fears were true. On the days she claimed to be away on business, she wasn't traveling far at all. Instead, she was staying overnight at various hotels that were only 30 miles from her office. That's when I decided to take it one step further. One evening, when she said she'd be away on another business trip, I hired a babysitter and drove to one of the hotels she was staying at. I parked my car across the street and waited. All night. The next morning, my heart dropped as I saw her leaving the hotel with my former boss. They were walking out together, looking casual, as if they had just wrapped up some work meeting. But I knew better. I couldn't sit still any longer. I jumped out of my car and went straight up to them. I confronted my wife right then and there. She tried to play it off, saying they had a business meeting, but I wasn't having it. I caught them coming out of a cheap motel at 6 a.m., just 30 miles from our home. There was no business happening there, at least none that was work-related. My ex-boss, realizing the situation was about to get messy, quickly slipped away while I started arguing with my wife. She denied everything, of course. Claimed it was all a misunderstanding. But I wasn't buying it. Not this time. I told her, right there on the spot, that our marriage was over. There was no coming back from this. In the days that followed, she moved in with a friend, leaving me at home with the kids. She begged me to take her back, to let her come home for the sake of our family, but I was done. The damage had been done, and there was no repairing the trust that had been broken. Even though my heart was shattered, I still needed closure. So I told her that if she came clean, if she confessed to everything, I might consider taking her back. Of course, That was a lie. I had no intention of getting back with her. But I needed the full story. Over the next few weeks, I pieced together the ugly truth. I found out that my wife hadn't just cheated on me with my ex-boss, she had cheated on me 7 times in total, and 6 of those were with men she worked with. Some of these men were married too, and I knew them personally. The betrayal ran so deep, I couldn't believe it. It felt like I had been living in a lie for nearly a decade. How could I have been so blind? Filing for divorce was the only option. The process was long and draining, but I knew I had to go through with it for my own sanity. After weeks of back and forths, we finally separated. She continued to beg for forgiveness, but I couldn't even look at her without feeling disgust. She had torn our family apart, and no amount of apologizing was going to fix that. And then came the final blow. During the divorce proceedings, I decided to get a DNA test done for our children, just to be sure. And what I found out devastated me even more. Our middle child wasn't biologically mine. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. The child I had raised, the child I loved with all my heart, wasn't even mine. When I confronted my wife with the DNA results, she continued to deny everything, so we took another test, and it confirmed the first. I told her I wasn't going to keep this a secret, and I didn't. I wrote letters to the wives of the men she had affairs with, letting them know that their husbands had been unfaithful. And I let them know that one of those men had fathered a child. As you can imagine, this caused a ripple effect. Marriages crumbled, just like mine had. My ex-wife ended up quitting her job, and she deleted all her social media accounts to escape the fallout. Of course, none of the men came forward to claim responsibility for my middle child, but I have all their names on record. One day, if my son wants to know who his biological father is, I'll be ready to help him find out. For now, though, I'm his dad. I've been there for him since the day he was born, and that's not going to change, no matter what the DNA says. As for me, I've moved on. I'm currently dating someone I went to high school with. We reconnected after my divorce, and things are going well. I'm cautious, of course, but so far, I haven't seen any red flags. I'm taking things slow, and I'm focusing on rebuilding my life. I have full custody of all 3 kids, and I limit my interactions with my ex-wife as much as possible. She's still trying to win me back, sending me pleading texts and trying to guilt-trip me into forgiving her, but I'm done. I've closed that chapter of my life, and I'm moving forward. There is a sense of satisfaction in knowing that she's now miserable, stuck in a lower-paying job, with her reputation ruined. Everyone knows what she did, and she has no one to blame but herself. But more importantly, I'm in a better place now. I'm healing, I'm happy, and I'm finally enjoying life again. So, that's my story. It's been a tough journey, but I've come out stronger on the other side. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this video, or if you've been through something similar and want to share your story, please leave a comment below. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the Barbecue Stories channel for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.